Well, prior to 1945, there was a group of young men within the village who used to sing impromptu music, really. And they were doing very well. And apparently they were invited to sing in one or two concerts within the village. Because, I mean, in those days, that was the main entertainment, really, was giving concerts. And eventually they decided, they had a meeting. And they thought perhaps we could actually form a choir and raise some money as a welcome home fund for people returning from the war. And they had a meeting in the Men's Institute here just up from the square. And they decided they would try and form a choir, but they needed somebody to conduct. And so they felt they would ask Mr. Wilfred Brown, who was a well-known bass chorister, and a man called Tom Williams and Albert Kemp. They were appointed to go and see Mr. Brown to see if he would be prepared to conduct. And his reply, yes, I will conduct, as long as you can get 4 people for each section, which would have made 16, we'll see what we can do. And sure enough, they managed to get 16 people together, and they started to give 1 or 2 concerts in the village, really. The first one was held in the church hall of Pencoy's Church. And that was very well attended, apparently. No electric, but oil lamps, you know. And from Albert Kemp's account to me, the smoke and fumes from the oil lamps were quite overbearing, really. But the choir went on, and Mr. Brown, Mr. Wilfred Brown, that is, he conducted the choir for the first 25 years, and did a great job, actually, to keep a group together. First of all, the choir did very, very local concerts, but eventually spread its wings to go a little bit further afield, and also started to enter contests in a small way to start with, and again that improved, which it does. The more contest work you do, the better you get at it, really. And as I said, Mr. Brown carried on then until 1969. And then his nephew, Ronald Brown, took over. But from the start of the choir, they always sang on Christmas Day. And in the early days, the choir would start at Pencoy's, just outside the vicarage, what was then the vicarage. And with a very few people, actually, and somebody would probably come out carrying a piece of toast and with their breakfast in their hand, as it were. And eventually they went from Pencoy's to the square, went up Cilliers Row, then Loscombe Road, and they came back and sang a little while in the square, and then went up through the village to Penventon, where they finished about 12:30. During that time, they used to sing about 40 carols, which is quite a few, really. And that continued for many years until the village grew, and new housing estates were built, and the choir found they just could not get around the village in one evening. And then somebody had this wonderful idea that instead of walking around the village, perhaps if we had transport, we could get around quicker. So we contacted a gentleman in the village called George Trelaw, and he used to keep the fish and chip shop, actually, but he had a lorry. And we said to George, would he be prepared to drive us around? And, oh, yeah, I'll do that, he said. I'll give the lorry a good clean and put some bales of straw in there, and we'll do that, which we did. And it was not a good idea at all, because we were really, really cold. Whereas if we walked for a little while, at least we kept a little bit warmer, you know. So really after that, we thought, well, this just isn't going to work. And we eventually settled to having, or giving half hours carol singing in the square from 11:30 on Christmas morning. And that tradition's gone on ever since. But that's about where we are at the moment.